On this day, 22 years ago, over 3,000 Americans were killed in the 9/11 attacks on the United States. Over 2 decades later, Americans are still awaiting answers about what happened that day, as well as what occurred leading up to the attacks and after. The organization 9/11 Justice is a grassroots movement made up of 9/11 survivors, first responders, family members of those who lost loved ones, and volunteers, Manhattan residents working to attain justice and accountability from those who were behind the attacks. Now, on its website, 9/11 Justice has posted documents, quote, proving that the FBI has withheld critical information from 9/11 families and also the American people. Now, here to discuss his experience is president of 9/11 Justice, Brett Eagleson. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you for having me.
And we know that you lost your father on 9/11. We're very sorry for your loss and for everyone else who lost loved ones on that day. Tell us more about what you and your organization are fighting for to understand what is the mission.
Sure. Well, on this somber day, as we mark the 22nd year anniversary of 9/11, I do have some hopeful news, what appears to be hopeful news to share with everyone. Last night we just got word that Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut, my state senator, my own senator, along with Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, sent a very strong-worded, demanding letter to Merrick Garland, the DOJ, and Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, demanding more disclosure, demanding more information, and demanding more documents. So, as we look back on 22 years, the fact that we're still fighting for justice and that we still need information, we still need answers, is devastating to us. However, there is a glimmer of hope, right? And if Senator Johnson, who is on the right side of the political spectrum, and Senator Blumenthal is on the left side of the political spectrum, if those two can come together to agree on something, you know that this is the right cause, this is the right push, and this is something that America can join in on. Everybody agrees that the 9/11 family members deserve the truth, we deserve closure, and we deserve accountability. This letter demands that the FBI and the DOJ adhere to the presidential executive order that President Biden did in 2021.
Can you speak to the nature of the disclosures that you hope to happen? You make reference in a recent op-ed to documents that have not been disclosed and point to evidence that there are gaps in the disclosures that the families and the American people more broadly haven't had access to. What are you expecting to find or hoping to find in these disclosures?
Sure. So one specific example that I can talk about, I think this is one of the most stark examples, is that the lawyers for the Guantanamo Five, so the defense counsel for the terrorists themselves, have received information from the United States government, from United States intelligence agencies. That information was denied to the 9/11 families. So you have the group of terrorist lawyers in Guantanamo Bay receiving communications, information, and help from the U.S. government, the same very documents that our lawyers have fought 22 years for, the same documents that our government has labeled state secrets, or they've labeled them too sensitive for the American people to see. The Guantanamo Defense Council has that information. There is information, for example, that is referred to in other reports that we have. So as part of the presidential executive order, President Biden in 2021 enacted an EO calling upon the FBI, DOJ, CIA, NSC to declassify to the greatest extent possible documents. We've gotten a sliver of those documents, and in those documents, there is a report that refers to call details between the hijackers handlers, and the Saudi embassy in Washington, D.C. When we've asked for the FBI's underlying analysis of those call details, those call records, we've been denied that. There is a lease that exists between the hijackers with Omar al-Bayoumi, who's guaranteeing the lease. Omar al-Bayoumi, the FBI says, was a Saudi intelligence operative. When we asked for that lease, we were told that lease doesn't exist. So they give us just enough, but they don't give us enough to actually win in a court of law. They don't give us enough to actually explain and tell the entire story. So we're standing here today, we're taking a stance, and we're pressing our government to finally tell the story. We don't care who it embarrasses. We don't care if it upsets Saudi Arabia. We don't care if it upsets our own government, but the truth needs to come out.
So you're saying that you're looking for information that would support your lawsuit against the government of Saudi Arabia, and that you have knowledge that information has been given that might help you in your case to the defendants in Guantanamo Bay. Is that right?
Yeah, look, I've been talking to the lawyers for the defense counsel in Guantanamo Bay. They told us if you guys had this information, it would shake you to the core. It would change the entire narrative of 9/11. They are shocked what they have been given. It probably points to, our supposition is that it points to the fact that the United States intelligence agencies knew a lot more prior to 9/11 that they ever let on to the American public. It points directly at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia supporting the Saudi intelligence apparatus, supporting these hijackers. Our FBI former officials have come forward. They've told us that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is 100% culpable for these attacks. So we're calling for truth. Listen, these documents would absolutely help us in our lawsuit. But that's not the only reason that they should come out. They should come out because in 22 years later, as we're teaching this in our schools, as I'm teaching my 3-year-old daughter and my 1-year-old son, as we're teaching our kids and our children about 9/11, we need to get the record right. We need to set the story right. And the story is not that 19 hijackers with no knowledge of English, no money, no knowledge of how to fly a plane, they had no idea about Western culture, were able somehow to band together and pull off the most devastating and consequential attack in this country's history with no help from anybody. They actually did have help, and that help came in the form of the Saudi government through the Saudis' own embassies and its support network that it had established in this country prior to 9/11. That is where all the roads point to. That is where all the evidence we have seen lately directly points the finger back at the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for its role that it played. So it's important that we get it right. We're writing history as we speak today. We need to get it right. Every American deserves the truth. This is one thing that Democrats and Republicans alike can agree on.
Right. Well, and it's important, as you alluded to a minute ago, for if there was an intelligence failing from U.S. intelligence officers, to address that for the safety of the country, to make sure it wouldn't occur again. My concern and my worry is, this issue, as with so many things we discuss frequently on this show, with respect to what the government knows about UAPs, what the government knows about the origins of COVID, if it is at all embarrassing to the intelligence officials, how can we ever? And they have tremendous power to disguise things from us or to keep things hidden, even in cases where Biden and all of Congress have signed agreements to unilaterally release information that the intelligence officials have on these subjects. We still get these highly redacted documents or documents that are just summaries of what the intelligence community purports to know. How can we ever get that information if it reflects poorly on the people who are responsible for doling out the information eventually?
Yeah, that's a really important point to make. And we all we can do is we can continue talking, we can continue pushing, we can continue writing op-eds and calling on members of Congress. We can have hearings. We can push for more information. Look, as time goes on, more and more individuals are coming forward. They don't want to die knowing what they know about what happened on 9/11, about what happened up to that day. Former FBI officials have come forward helping us. Foreign governments, the United Kingdom, Scotland Yard, had a series of documents that they seized in a raid of al-Bayoumy's apartment. When we couldn't get answers from our own government, the British government stepped in and gave our lawyers a trove of documents. One of those documents was this guy al-Bayoumi, who had an apartment. He had a flat in Birmingham, England. He had a diagram. It was a yellow notebook. It was a yellow notepad. There was a plane drawn on that notepad, and then next to it was an algorithm. And former pilots have said, that is an algorithm at what height that plane would need to be in order to hit a target on the horizon line. So this is information that if Americans by and large knew, they would be shocked. They would be horrified to know the extent that the Saudi government played in these 9/11 attacks. But as we continue to push, we are having success. So I applaud you guys for having us on this show to allow us to tell our point. As more and more people become frustrated, the dam is starting to break. We are starting to slowly get information out, and we welcome that bipartisan letter, that very powerful letter last night to Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray from a very strong Senate subcommittee.
Yeah, it seems very important to keep this issue bipartisan so that it can't be, politically captured. All Americans have an interest in disclosure in so many things, and particularly this. Brett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.